Good morning, Foothills Church. You guys are all looking good. Let's step into our sermon time today. Let me say a word of welcome to those joining us over in the chapel and those listening online. I'm always reminded that there are people listening closely all over. A friend of mine who invited me to go fishing in Wyoming in May, this coming May. I told him I was probably not going to be able to make that because I'm too busy. And so he sent me a text last week, right after I got done preaching the third message in this margin series. I hopped off the platform and my phone buzzed, and I did what I don't usually do. I checked my phone, and he said, "Margins, see you in May." I love it. So funny, so funny. So glad to have you listening closely. It's awesome. Wherever you're listening or tuning in on the web, we're grateful. Any of you guys ever run out of gas? Some of you are like, oh, it's painful, isn't it? I've come really close a few times, and my bride usually doesn't let me forget those times when I've gotten really close. One time I actually ran out of gas, and it might be the worst, maybe the worst scenario. My parents lived in Ohio, central Ohio, and every winter they would drive their vehicle for several years, drive their own vehicle down to somewhere in Florida, and they would winter there for 2 or 3 months. Well, when they got old enough, they didn't want to make the drive. They asked me if I would fly out and drive them down. So being the dutiful, responsible, son that I am, they flew me back, and I drove them to Florida. Well, we're hauling down, getting close to Atlanta after the first day, and we're winding up the first day of travel, and I noticed that my gas tank is low. And so I thought, well, first thing in the morning, while Mom and Dad are eating breakfast, I'll get gas, I'll be all ready to go. And then we can get an early start because I want to beat rush hour in Atlanta in the morning rush hour, right? So the next morning I get up, and one thing leads to another. We're sitting around eating breakfast, having coffee. I say, we got to hurry. And that should have been my first warning sign, right? Got to hurry. And so instead we hop in the car and like we got to beat the rush. So I jump on the freeway, and there's 6 lanes, North Atlanta, there's 6 lanes going south, and it's humming. And I'm in the center lane, and I'm humming because I'm beating the morning rush hour, and I'm a happy guy. And then all of a sudden, the car just powers down. And I'm like, the car's broken. I got enough momentum. I work my way to the edge of the road, and I pull off on the edge. And of course, there's a very narrow shoulder there, and I see up ahead. I look down first, and I'm like, oh, and it dawns on me. I'm sure the blood just drained out of my face. I was like, oh my gosh, I have run out of gas on a 5-lane expressway with my 80-year-old parents in the car, who flew me to Ohio to responsibly drive them because they didn't feel confident to do it themselves. This is humiliating on a number of levels. So I won't bore you with all the details, but this involved an incredibly long hike, and I tried to double back and make a shortcut, and I realized there's like 15-foot hurricane fence on the side of the freeway in Atlanta, which I had to shimmy over. But first I had to hurl my gas tank over. It was a scene. And getting out, gassing up my car, my 80-year-old dad gets out of his car. He's on oxygen, and he's trying to slow traffic down. Here's a little news for you. Atlantans do not slow down for an 80-year-old man on oxygen going like this. Don't do it. They don't do it. I managed to get gas in the car. We got on our way, and on every 50 miles from Atlanta to St. Pete's Beach, my mom said, I can't believe you ran out of gas. Bless her heart. It's true. You ever run out of gas? How many of you run out of gas more than once? A few of you, whoa, okay. Some honest people in the room. The rest of you who are afraid to admit it, it's okay. I started thinking about why people run out of gas. Why did I do that? What was going on? Because I wanted to make sure it didn't happen again. Why did I run out of gas? You start thinking about the reasons people run out of gas, and you start realizing there's some parallels to what we're talking about in margin. Drivers run out of gas for very similar reasons, parallel reasons that people run out of gas, mentally, emotionally, physically. So I started thinking, well, one of the things, I ignored the owner's manual. I wasn't, that was my excuse at least. I wanted a familiar car. I didn't know, mileage and how long I got to go, what I could do when it's right on the sliver of empty. How far do I have to go? I wasn't sure, right? You've all been there. I wasn't sure where, how far. So I wasn't familiar with the system. I wasn't familiar with the car like I should have been to know what are my limits? What are my capabilities, right? And it doesn't matter how much faith you have. Your gas tank isn't going to get any bigger. You may say, well, I believe I have a bigger gas tank. I know it says it only gets so many miles, but I believe I really don't believe empty means empty. You might think that about yourself. Emptiness, burnout, fatigue, hitting a wall, that's stuff other people do that don't know it. They're not as strong as I am, you say to yourself. God has given you a certain size tank, friends. And you just have to learn to live with the fact that if you ignore it to your own peril. By ignoring the owner's manual, pushing your body further than it was designed to go, pushing your mind, pushing your emotions further than they were designed to go, than God created them to go, it means you're eventually going to run out of gas. I know I sound like a broken record, but your creator, your designer, the one who wrote your owner's manual, he says every 6 days, take a day off. It's so important he put it right there. We talked about this. I know it sounds like a broken record. He put it right in with the Big Ten. Right up there with don't murder, right up there with adultery. Every 6 days, take a day off. How many of us this morning, are ignoring this commandment regularly? Again, it's not a guilt thing. It's not a legalistic thing. It's a gift from God. Sabbath. It's a gift from God. He knows, our creator, our designer, the one who engineered our systems, the one who wrote our owner's manual, he knows what it takes for us to thrive. A Sabbath is given to us as a gift, friends, to stop. We talked about it. Stop, rest, delight, refocus on God, those sorts of things. Here's another reason drivers run out of gas: being distracted and not watching your gauges. That was my big failure. I got distracted with breakfast or food or something. I got distracted with my bigger goal. I got to beat rush hour. That was my thing. I was focused. And it's really the main reason that we run out of gas in our lives. The dashboard gauges are right there in front of us, aren't they? On our vehicles. I mean, I looked around, I'm like, it wasn't like, there's no gas gauge on this car. No, right there, boom. See it right through the steering wheel. E means what? Empty. It's just like our vehicles. We all have dashboard kind of gauges in our lives. These are the warning signs. They're signals that we're getting low, that we're running on fumes, that we're not recharging, we're not renewing. For example, one of the gauges we need to watch is sleep. How are you sleeping? What are your sleep patterns? Not getting sleep could be a gauge, a warning light for you. Weight. Often weight can be a gauge. When you're overstressed, when you're pushing it too hard, too fast, it can be easy to put on weight. Irritability is a big one. This is my gauge of choice. This is how I know when I'm tapping out. I get edgy and I get snappy with people. I get short, right? People in your lives, maybe your friends, your spouse, your kids, your coworkers might say, man, you're edgy lately. You're irritable. That's a warning light. You might be feeling that edginess inside. Pay attention to that. That's a gauge you should be watching. You see, when your dashboard gauges or warning lights are going off, that's an indicating that you're not getting enough refreshment. You're not getting enough renewal. You're not getting enough rest. So being distracted, not watching your gauge is common reason. Here's another reason: pride. We don't like to hear this one, but pride, thinking that the limits of my tank don't apply to me. Some people have talked to me and they've said, God made me to handle more, Pastor. He just made me to handle more. He's wired me stronger. He's giving me more ability to do more. And in my head, I'm thinking, really? Then why are you talking to me right now about why your marriage is breaking up? Why are you talking to me right now about why your relationship with your kids are estranged? Why are you talking about me right now about the difficulty you have to stop drinking? See, those are signals that something in the system is not right, and we're self-medicating, or we're acting out in ways that are destructive to us. See? And sometimes we think to ourselves, well, the laws of nature, none of the laws that God, none of the ways God wired us with our bodies and our minds and our emotions, well, they don't really apply to me. Well, nothing will drain your tank faster than arrogance, ego, and pride, friends. Because you think, I can do it, I can go on, I can keep pushing. Let's talk about one more common reason why people run out of gas. No margin. Not allowing time to fill up. That's why we're talking about this series. That's what we're talking about, where we don't carve out time to refuel and recharge. You knew you were low on gas, you didn't leave early enough, so you rushed to that appointment, and then, that's what happened to me in Atlanta. I was in a hurry. Your lack of margin didn't allow you enough extra time so you could get gas, so eventually you're going to run out. Now, this series has resonated with many of you, it seems, because you realize you feel it. You feel the exhaustion. You're feeling the overload. Your gauges are sort of pegged out in some areas of your life. The reason I know that is you're talking to me. You're talking to me after service. You're sending me emails. I'm getting texts from you. This is resonating. God seems to have nudged me to do this series way more than my own benefit. Now, during this series, I've been saying that margin is the space you have to create. Margin is the space you have to create between your responsibilities and the limits that you have. Your load and your limits. That's what we've been talking about. Margin is having some breathing room in your life. It's not cramming every moment with activity. It's not cramming your budget. It's not having any spare margin in your budget. That's living on over. That's stressful. No margin in your budget. I heard a woman being interviewed this last week on one of the news channels about the government shutdown. And she was at one of these pop-up food banks that were giving out groceries and food. And they interviewed her about how difficult the government shutdown was being. And she said, this is so difficult. This is so hard on me. I went from spending $300 at BJ's restaurant one day to getting government handouts the next. You see the problem with that? I was stunned. I couldn't believe, actually the news channel, I saw it, I couldn't believe they played it. I'm like, really? And I asked my wife, honey, we've been to BJ's Live. We ever spent $300? How do you spend $300 at BJ's? See, she had no margin. FPU is something she needs. Having some margin, so in case of crises, you miss a check for a week. I know it's hard, but are you building in margin? That's an example. No margin in finances. See, margin is creating some reserve, finding a way to create some reserve so you aren't running on empty all the time. And in this series, I remind you we need margin in all sorts of areas: physical, mental, emotional. We have to be paying attention to these gauges, friends. As we're wrapping this up today, I want to make sure you know, especially small group leaders, there's a summary sheet that is like a card, a one-page summary sheet of this series that our productions team have created. They're going to be posting that up this week. It's be on our social media and everything, on our website. And you could use that, and all of you could use that and just download it or put it on your phone or whatever, and it'll remind you of the key practices that we've talked about that will help you sustain some margin in your life. Now, today, I want to wrap this up by looking at a very important teaching of Jesus. Might be one of the most important passages on this topic that we're talking about in margin. This is Jesus' invitation, Matthew 11. If you're not turned there, turn there. Matthew 11. This is Jesus' invitation to live life with a full heart and a rested, refreshed soul. Sign me up, right? Rather than running on empty, rather than being stressed out, marginless life. This is Jesus' invitation to live a rested, refreshed soul. So Jesus says this, look in your Bibles. Come to me, verse 28, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. Now pause there for a second. As I said at the beginning of this series, many people are feeling weary and burdened. Remember, I told you this isn't just a middle-aged or older person problem. This isn't, well, you get older. No, this is 20-somethings. This is singles. These are young people. Everyone in our culture is feeling this weariness and burden. Jesus says, come to me, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, my burden light. I want to unpack these important words of Jesus. This is such an important invitation because it offers us a sustainable path for keeping our tanks full rather than running on empty or on the edge all of the time. But please hear this. Before you're ready to really hear Jesus' invitation here, you've got to do something. You've got to get fed up. You have to resolve to be done with the way you've been living. You know what I'm talking about? The pace you've been going, the load you've been carrying. You have to get good and dissatisfied with being stressed out, tired, and hurried all the time. It doesn't have to be like that, friends. I know that because God didn't design us for that. Nothing is going to change in your life until you get fed up. I mean, as long as you're willing to live in a rut or you're willing to live stressed out and you just sort of love the adrenaline rush, nothing's going to happen. You could go through an entire series of messages that we've been in and not do anything, and I would say the likelihood of you being, if not stressed the same, more stressed a year from now, in January of 2020, you're still going to be fried out because you didn't get fed up. Nothing's going to happen until you resolve, I refuse to live this way. Notice the first part of 28. Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened. You see, here's the reality. Before you are willing to come to Jesus, you have to admit you're tired. You have to admit you're weary. You have to own up to the reality of things. Are you fed up with the pace of life? Are you willing to do something about it? Once you're there, Jesus says, come to me. Come to me. When you're done trying to live a marginless life, you done? Come to me. Now notice Jesus uses 3 verbs in this invitation. Come, take, and learn. Here's what Jesus' invitation to you. Come to me, meaning come to me and bring the good in your life, the bad in your life, the frustrating in your life, the painful, the shameful, the exhausting, everything. Bring all of that load. Bring all of that burden to me, Jesus says, and I will give you rest. Notice Jesus doesn't say, come to me. He says, come to me. He's not saying, come to church, come to religion, come to ritual, come to rules, come to regulations. He's not saying, come to a time management seminar. Not that that's a bad thing. But you see, Jesus' answer to running on empty is not a program, friends. Please hear this. Not a program. It's not a philosophy. It's not a pill. It's not a plan. It's a person. Let that settle over your souls for a minute. It's a person. Jesus doesn't care why you come to him as long as you come. Doesn't care where you've been as long as you come. Doesn't care what you're carrying as long as you come. John 6 says, whoever comes to me, I will never reject. That's Jesus says that. Whoever comes to me, I will never reject. And you can come to him and say, God, I'm wiped out. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I'm stressed. I'm full of anxiety. I'm worried. I'm unfulfilled. He doesn't care why you come. He just says, come. Come. See, the answer is a person. Come to me, and I'll give you rest. Notice, what kind of rest is he talking about? He clarifies the rest. It's rest for what? What's your text say? It's rest for your souls. See? That's a much deeper kind of rest than just physical. See, that's meaningful because most of us, the issue is not tired muscles. The issue is a tired heart, a tired soul, a weariness. Jesus is promising you deep rest, friends. This is Jesus speaking. He's promising you deep rest for your soul. It might sound counterintuitive to you. Like, wait, I'm going to come and I'm going to get rest? Don't I have to do something? See, we always want to do something. You know, we want to fill the empty in our lives with more doing. You ever notice that? We want to fill the empty with activity. We want to try to do more. We want to maybe buy more. Or we want to binge watch more. It just doesn't fill the emptiness. It's not the answer to our souls. Our culture and humanity say, go, go, go. And Jesus says what? Do you hear him? Come to me. Come to me. You really need this time with me, child. You really need this time of stillness. You really need some silence. You really need some quiet. You need some solitude. You need to reflect on my teachings. You need some listening prayer. Shh. Hush. Listen to me. If you're going to live with a full heart, and if you're going to live with a sustainable pace, you've got to get fed up with marginless living, and you have to come to Jesus. Next, from verse 29, you've got to learn to give up some self-control, or give up control. Got ahead of myself. I was about to say, the only control God never calls you to give up is self-control. You know that? But often the reason for overload in our lives is we're trying to control things we're never designed to control. We go around like it all depends on us. We've got to hold it all together. The greater your need for control, the more overloaded and stressed out you're likely to be. Sooner or later, you're going to realize most of the things that really matter in life are beyond your control. Here's how Jesus says it in our text. It may not sound like that, but let's unpack it. Take my yoke upon you. Take my yoke upon you. See, he's talking about a yoke, which, as you're probably familiar, is a piece of wood, a large beam of wood where you put two cattle together to pull a cart. Instead of one of them pulling the whole weight, they share that load. You can link 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 together. You yoke animals together because it actually lightens the load, because you're not pulling it all by one. Taking Jesus' yoke means there's less of a load on you. Less of a load on you. Jesus says, yoke up with me. I will help you with it. I will carry it for you. In verse 30, he actually says, my yoke is easy. You see that? My burden light. Now, a yoke, let's unpack it. A yoke symbolizes a couple different things in the Bible. First, it's a symbol of partnership. Symbol of partnership. What you have here is an offer from Jesus to be your life partner. He says, yoke up with me. You weren't meant to carry the load all by yourself. Jesus isn't going to add to your load because he doesn't have a load. He's not carrying the burden. He carries no burden. So you yoke up with Jesus. It's not like he's putting anything on you. He's taking it off you. So a yoke is a symbol of partnership. And the other thing a yoke is a symbol for is control. I keep wanting to say self. Is control. Because you use a yoke to guide animals, right? You put that yoke on there and you use it to guide them. And when you guide the animals, you keep them from going off in a ditch. You keep them at the right pace that's appropriate for what they can manage. When you're yoked with Jesus, you move together in the same direction and the same pace as him. Make sense? You can't go faster than Jesus. You can't go careening off. You're going in the same direction that God wants you to go, the same pace he wants you to go. Do you see there in verse 30 where it says, my yoke is easy? You know what's fascinating about that word? That word easy also means perfectly shaped. His yoke fits your shape, friends. His yoke fits your design. It's easy. It rests easy on you. Do you hear that? I hope your soul hears that. It rests easy on you. And by the way, take my yoke is really an exchange. That says, you give me your burden, and then I'm going to place my easy yoke on you. Take my yoke. Let me set the pace. Let me set the direction. My load's light. It's easy. Next, Jesus says, learn to trust. Look at the second half of verse 29. Learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Fascinating. Why? Learn from me. You would think he would say, learn from me, for I am a good time manager. Learn from me, for I am capable. Learn from me after. Why does he say humble? I'm gentle and humble in heart. What does that have to do with it? Well, Jesus models for us how to live with purpose and peace. That's why he says, watch how I do it. Learn from me. Watch how I live. This is why we've got to get familiar with the Jesus life. How does he live? What's his pacing? Obviously, it's a learning process. You're not going to undo years of overload in your patterns and overnight. It's a learning process, but he calls us to journey with him and to learn from him. Notice the verse didn't say, learn from me. Watch me do it because I have endurance and I have stamina. I have strength and I have stability. I have excellent organizational and management techniques. No, he says, learn from me because I am gentle. Pay attention. What's he saying? Learn from me because I'm gentle. I'm humble at heart. What do these things have to do with stress, lightning load margin? What? Could it be that gentleness and humility, think this through with me. Could it be that gentleness and humility are so important because the two greatest causes of overload in our lives are aggression and arrogance? Think about that. Aggression. We don't want to wait for anything. Do it now. I'm going to get it. It's my way. I got to do it. I got to beat the rush hour, traffic, and Lynn, I got to get this done. Get my parents to Florida. On to the next thing. Maybe it's arrogance. We want to control everything. Your ego is more responsible for stress in your life than you might realize. Jesus says the antidote is gentleness, humility. Learn from me, he says. Notice, think about it. What was the secret sauce of Jesus' pace in life? It's an interesting question. One of the things I notice in John is that 12 times in this book, Jesus said, I only do what my Father tells me to do. Isn't that brilliant? I'm spending time with my Father, and I only do what the Father leads me to do. And I don't worry about the rest. You see, when we begin to trust God in deeper and deeper ways, instead of stressing, instead of worrying, when we trust, it lowers the overload. It lowers the stress. It gives you more margin. One of the biggest things that I'm learning, I feel like God is teaching me in this season of my life, is how little control I really have. And promise me, I've told God, no, I've learned this lesson. Let's move on. Apparently not. But I realize the older I get, the less control I realize I have. I have limited knowledge about what's going to happen. Where's this going? I have limited insight on understanding about the timing of things and what ought to happen when. Our leadership team, our staff, we're wrestling with big questions about, where our church is going. And as a leader, I want to figure all that out. And I want to come and tell you the answer. We got all smart people around the table. We're all saying, Jesus, where are we going? What's the timing? When? Where? How? So when I'm sitting in prayer, and I'm sitting in times of reflection, and I'm thinking about how to lead, and how to solve problems, and where to go, and what needs to happen, I can start feeling the anxiety rise up. I can start feeling the fear. What if I can't figure this out? I'm the leader. But God's been meeting me in those moments. God has been meeting me in those moments, and he's been whispering something steadily to me. Just stay close, and I'll get you there. I love that, and I hate that. You with me? Don't focus all your energy out there trying to figure it all out. Focus here with me, and I'll get you there. Cling to my hem, cling to my garment. I'll get you there. You'll be right where you need to be when you stay with me. That feels easy. That feels like cheating. That feels like I'm not earning my pay. I got angst, man. I got to stay up all night, man. I got to work hard, man. I got to get beat up. I got to earn my money. Just stay close. I'll get you there. Are you fed up, friends? You fed up with a stressed out, fried out, drained out pace of life? If so, then you're ready to make a change. And you're ready to start living differently. You're ready to accept Jesus' invitation, come to me. This is where living with margin must start. Because with Jesus, spending time with him, getting to know him, journeying with him, is where you'll find the acceptance of your Creator that you need. The approval of the one who designed you that you need. With him is where you'll find the permission to live differently that you need. With him, you'll find the model for living differently that you need. With him, you'll find the healing from what drives your push. The healing that you need. With him, you'll find the courage to resist the culture that you need. With him, you'll find the strength to resist the voices from the past. Can't believe you ran out of gas. You know the voices. With Jesus, you'll experience trust in God's purposes, God's timing, God's pace that you need. Let me wrap up this series with this. Every single solitary thing you need to discover, learn to walk in, and learn to live out a life with margin is found through time and communion with Jesus. Don't try to muscle it through. Jesus invites you, come. Take my yoke. Let me set the pace. Let me set the direction. Learn from me, and you'll find rest. It's a deep peace. You'll find rest for your souls. It's time to end the craziness, friends. It's time for you, it's time for a church like ours to set a different role model in the Foothills, in this culture. It's time for you, parents, to model something differently for your kids. They're watching you. Grandparents, it's time to live differently for your family. It's time for us to help one another, encourage one another in this Herculean challenge to live with margin. Lord God, you know where each of us are at this point in our conversation about all this. We've asked you to raise our awareness, and I'm wondering if there might be some in the room today who need to come to you and accept your invitation, Lord Jesus, for the very first time, to receive your forgiveness, to receive your renewal, to receive your strength. I'm wondering if there's anyone in the room who needs to connect with Jesus for the very first time. If that's you, just slip your hand up. I would love to know that God's tapping on you and just kind of calling you to connection with him. Okay. Lord, for the rest of us, we need your strength to continue to work these truths into our lives. This is a longer-term learning process. This isn't a one and done. It's not a 4-week message and skipping a couple of appointments. And it all starts with this rootedness, this life-giving connectivity to you, this trust in you that really believes you have our best and that you care more about the things that matter to us than we do. And that you'll set the pace and the direction in the perfect way. A yoke that rests easy on us, that breathes life into us. We're sick of being trashed. We're sick of trying to keep up with the culture crunch. We want to live differently. So fill us with yourself. And carry us into tomorrow and into our weeks and into our months and our years ahead. And teach us. We want to learn from you. And now, Lord Jesus, as we take some final steps in our time of our gathering today, we step through this practice of bringing our offerings and our tithes to you, and we give these gifts to you as a way to honor you, to say thank you for providing. You've given us everything. Every capability to earn money we have comes from you. And so we honor you in this. We answer your call to be good stewards, and we store our treasures in heaven where nothing can destroy as we invest in your kingdom work in the world. So bless each gift and each giver. It's an honor to do this. We love you. In your name, amen.